I've been in this business now for over 25 years, designing two-wheelers, designing cars of every description, now some tractors, some three-wheelers as well. And, while designing, you realize that you have a choice. Basically, you can create Indian cars that sort of are almost an apology for being Indian, or you can create cars that were proudly Indian, confidently Indian, as good or better as anything else you find in the world. And the difference isn't the elements you use, it's whether you understand why they matter. I think there's a fine line therefore between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. And this is our philosophy as we design global cars from India and for India. We've seen what works for India usually works in global markets, but it's not the other way around. A lot of global OEMs struggle with that because they say, oh, we've got this amazing global product that sells X million units a year. They bring it to India and it flops. Yeah. Why? Because they've not appreciated the cultural nuances. It's not about, painting something yellow, even though everyone says India is such a colorful country. Correct. In vehicles, it's white and silver. That's it. These are, I think, some examples of how the influence of where you are and who you're designing for, is needs to be baked into the conception of a vehicle itself, not something you sprinkle on like salt and pepper later. You can't say, oh, here's this car and now I'm going to throw some Indianness over it.
Coming up on Design Mindset, Pratap Bose, Chief Design Officer at Mahindra Group, and how to navigate the delicate balance between global design appeal and cultural authenticity, and why understanding intent matters more than following rules. Hey everyone, welcome to Design Mindset. I'm Radhika Seth. In today's hyper-connected world, designers draw inspiration from everywhere. Japanese minimalism, Scandinavian functionality, Indian textiles, African patterns. But there's an increasingly important question we all need to wrestle with. Where's the line between cultural appreciation and appropriation? How do we honor traditions while creating for global audiences? My guest today has spent his career navigating exactly this challenge in one of the most culturally visible industries, automotive design. Pratap Bose is Chief Design Officer at Mahindra Group, leading over 100 design professionals across India and the UK. His journey from NID in India to Royal College of Art in London, through roles at Piaggio in Italy and over 14 years at Tata Motors, has given him a unique perspective on creating designs that are both globally relevant and culturally authentic. At Tata Motors, he pioneered the impact design philosophy, creating vehicles that were unmistakably modern and globally competitive, while celebrating their Indian heritage. Today at Mahindra, he's continuing to explore how automotive design can bridge cultures without appropriating them. Pratap, welcome to Design Mindset.
Thank you, Radhika. So happy to be here.
So happy to have you here. So, Pratap, let's start with the automotive design specifically. Cars are, deeply cultural objects. They represent status, identity, family values. So when you're designing a vehicle for global markets, how do you navigate what's appropriate culturally, like as inspiration, versus what might be appropriation?
Yeah, Radhika, I'll take you back to 2007, actually, just a year before I joined Tata Motors. I was in Mercedes-Benz Advanced Design Center in Yokohama in Japan.
Oh,
it was one of the global advanced design centers that Mercedes had dotted around the world. There was a studio in Carlsbad in California. There was one in Mitsubishi. Of course, the headquarters was in Sindelfingen in Germany. And then in Japan, there was a significant advanced design presence. So, we used to design a lot of future Mercedes products. And one time we had the then chief design officer, Professor Peter Pfeiffer, was going to visit us, and I was obsessed with my design looking German.
Oh,
Because obviously it's a German brand,
yeah.
and very proudly German, as you can
Mm,
imagine. Mercedes
ab-
Benz represents so much.
yeah.
So I was, in the weeks leading up to the presentation to Professor Pfeiffer himself,
Hmm.
I was obsessed with how can it be more German, how can it be more German, and that's where this appropriation and
Hmm.
appreciation question comes up.
Hmm.
Do you repeat the stereotypes, or do you take inspiration from a country and reflect that in the design? So
Hmm.
anyway, so the day came, Professor Pfeiffer came, and I remember showing him the mock-up in clay, and
Hmm.
asked him that, Professor, is this German enough?
Oh.
And what he told me has stayed with me till this day. And he said, look, don't worry about Germany, just
Hmm.
worry about if it's Mercedes enough.
Ah.
And that, to me, uh, the lesson in that is that each brand has a provenance.
Hmm.
The provenance is deeply linked to the country of origin. So today Jaguar Land Rover is Indian owned, but it's still a British. It's a British company.
Absolutely.
Volvo is owned by Geely,
Hmm.
but Volvo is very, very much Scandinavian.
Correct.
So ownership and provenance are two different things. And therefore, when we say global products at Mahindra,
Hmm.
uh, we are very proudly Indian, and we
Hmm.
are very, very cognizant of the fact that we can be as good, if not better, than anyone else in the world. And the markets, therefore, we go to. So we've started entering some overseas markets, and we are
Hmm.
doing very well there.
Lovely.
South Africa, Australia, we've just launched a couple of our new products.
Wow.
And the way that they've been, let's say, welcomed in those
Hmm.
advanced markets. I mean, Australia and South Africa have every product you can imagine from
Hmm.
all over the world.
Hmm.
But still, we're able to break through that clutter because we are truly Mahindra.
Hmm.
And I think that's very important. You have to reflect who you are as a brand, what Mahindra stands for. And then it's linked, of course, to its country of origin. So for me, it's more important to reflect what Mahindra values are in our products
Wow.
rather than what India stands for. Because by association, it'll happen automatically anyway. You
Ah,
want it or not, people will do that.
got it.
So I feel, stay authentic to your brand,
Hmm.
and that's where you'll find the answers.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So I'm going to take a little step back, okay, and go back to the time when you were developing the impact design language at Tata Motors.
Yeah.
How did you ensure that you were celebrating Indian design heritage rather than just using, surface level cultural elements? So what did you do there?
You know, in the packaging of the product, so that means
Mm-hmm.
when you are laying out
Hmm.
the dimensions of a vehicle,
Hmm.
again, there is very important to keep in mind local conditions, local needs, local requirements. So,
Hmm.
for instance, we were doing a brand new platform
Mm-hmm.
called Alpha Arc. It's a small car platform,
Okay.
and we were designing a brand new hatchback on that platform, on that architecture.
Okay.
And we also spoke to, I can't name, but we were also speaking to a Western OEM, global OEM,
Okay.
to see if we could use their architecture.
Hmm.
And we actually rejected their architecture because it did not meet our local requirements.
Oh.
So what are those things that we sort of rejected, or what are those things that we wanted in
Hmm.
our architecture,
Hmm.
uh, to put into this car?
Correct.
So, for example, in a hatchback in Europe, you only pretty much sit in the front.
Yeah.
Hatchbacks are not family vehicles. In India, they're family vehicles.
Yeah.
So that means you have to fit at least three people comfortably in the back.
Correct.
That decides a certain dimension for the width of the car.
Yeah.
Then, if you have the person in the middle in a European car, there's a tunnel in the floor. So
Yeah.
you cannot put your legs there. And
Correct.
they have it because usually no one sits there. You
Yeah.
know, if at all there'll be a third or maximum four people in a European car. In our car, we always want to design for five. So
Yeah.
we created a flat floor in the architecture.
Okay.
So there was no tunnel in the middle.
Yes, correct.
We have a population of all descriptions that you can think of. I mean, just India, north to south, east to west, is the dimension and spread of Europe itself.
Correct.
Someone was telling me it spreads from it would be as wide or as long as Oslo to Istanbul, and
Wow.
as wide as the London to whatever is
True.
sort of in the
True.
east of
True.
Europe.
Correct.
So Europe itself, in that physical dimension, has 29 countries,
Hmm.
and we are also very similar. So we wear saris, we wear turbans, we wear dhotis, we wear trousers, we wear skirts. Um,
Correct.
so in that architecture, we ensured that all four doors open to 90 degrees, because if you're in a sari, sometimes you're a little bit restricted, and if the door opens wider, you can get in and out easier.
Absolutely.
The head, where the sort of roof height
Yeah.
was designed keeping sometimes headgear in mind in
Correct.
Punjab or in Rajasthan. So these are the
Hmm.
these are the very unique conditions that we use to actually lay out vehicles for India.
Hmm.
Nowhere in the world, for example, do you have sub 4 meter as a category of vehicles. In Japan, they have a small category called K cars, but a sub 4 meter car doesn't exist anywhere in the world.
Okay.
In that sub 4 meters,
Hmm.
to be precise, 3,995 millimeters. In
Hmm.
India, we have vans, we have MPVs, we have SUVs, we have sedans, and we have hatchbacks.
Wow.
So India, because of its conditions, is
Hmm.
able to create products which you don't see anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
Actually, it's a very, very unique. In fact, a lot of my global OEM design directors who are designing products for India really struggle. They said, "How do you design a sedan within 4 meters? It's unheard of. It's
Yeah.
one of the most difficult design challenges anywhere in the automotive industry." And
Wow.
yet, companies and designers in India are able to create a whole range of vehicles in sub 4 meters.
Wow.
So Radhika, that's how we look at conditions. And like you said, it's not superficial. It's really in the architecture of the vehicle.
Wow.
Um, we have a product called Bolero, if you know.
Yeah.
Uh, Bolero has a side opening rear door, the
Hmm.
door at the back. We've thought for many years we should have an upward opening door, blah blah blah. No,
Hmm.
but it's got a side opening door because in the northern Indian states, when the village headman or a local MP or a politician is traveling,
Hmm.
his bodyguards sit in the back seats,
Yeah.
and they need to get out of the vehicle very
Absolutely.
quickly if should something happen. So
Yeah.
these are requirements you don't see anywhere else in the world.
Yeah. True.
So
Absolutely.
you have to be I think you have to be acutely sensitive to these cultural
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
nuances. And
Hmm.
having said that, when you have a flat floor in the rear of a hatchback and three people can sit, having said that, that same product would be great anywhere else in the world. So we've seen what works for India usually works in global markets, but it's not the other way around.
Hmm.
So what works in Germany or what works in the UK may not work in India at all. And a lot of global OEMs struggle with that because they say, oh, we've got this amazing global product that sells
Yeah.
X million units a year. They bring it to India and it flops.
Yeah.
Why? Because they've not appreciated the cultural nuances.
Okay.
And it's not, and like you said, it's not superficial. It's not about
Yeah.
putting paisley print on the seat, or it's not about painting something yellow.
Yeah.
In fact, the largest selling color in India is white.
Yeah.
Even though everyone says India is such a colorful country, in
Correct.
vehicles it's white and silver. That's it.
Yeah, I can
So
understand that, concept. Like, we are one of the few countries that actually, reverse a vehicle, will treat it like a god, and,
yeah,
the puja, aarti, and then break a
yeah,
coconut also so that it's auspicious. We won't buy it during inauspicious days. So, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So these are, I think, some examples of how the influence of where you are and
Mm,
who you're designing for
Yeah.
is needs to be baked into the conception of a vehicle itself, not something you sprinkle on like salt and pepper later. You can't say, oh, here's this car and now I'm going to throw some Indianness over it. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to flip the coin and ask you this. So, automotive industry often also talks about global design, like global platforms with local adaptations. What you were just right now telling me about. But where's the line of authenticity, of cultural adaptation and tokenistic cultural decoration? Like, how do you avoid the trap of slapping on just cultural symbols to say, how do you avoid it? Because that's a problem that most foreign people find, like, or if we are going abroad and we, like for China would have their own ways of
Yeah.
doing their vehicles. So in the flip side, how do you do that?
So, in India, we vehicles of all sizes pretty much, uh, and many people are able to afford a driver.
Yeah,
That means the owner of the vehicle is not necessarily the one who drives the car,
correct.
which is not the case globally.
Yeah,
Globally, having a driver is a very, the elite of the elite of the elite, right?
yeah,
But in India, you can have a small hatchback driven by a driver. I mean,
yeah,
there's no one even bats an eyelid,
yeah,
which
correct.
means that you have to think of the rear passenger much more than you would anywhere else.
Hmm.
So again, the way we do, leg room, head room, shoulder room for the rear passengers
Hmm.
is fundamentally important. And this is a like I said, this is a uh, it's a philosophical difference between a car designed in and for India and
Hmm.
a vehicle designed for the world.
Hmm.
We also have cultural symbols. Now we can call them superficial or not.
Hmm.
People place a little idol on the dashboard
Correct.
on the dashboard to create a little bit of space. Now you don't say, okay, this is for idols, but if you create a little bit of flat space, you know
Yeah,
then then the customer can see if they want to or not. we
yeah.
had we we have some cars where there's no flat space and it comes back as a huge feedback.
Wow.
Now, putting an idol on the dashboard is probably a requirement you won't see anywhere else in the world. you
Yeah.
know Now, while you don't have to make a pedestal and a
Yeah.
mandir there or whatever, all you need to do is be conscious to create a flat space where someone can put an idol if they want to or not. That's their choice.
Yeah.
So I think you have to subtly build in all of this into our cars.
Yeah. I completely resonate with this now. Like, I shuttle between Dhaka and Mumbai. I live in Dhaka also. And it came as a culture shock to me that there are no valet packings in Dhaka. Like, if you go, even a five-star hotel doesn't have a valet service because they're all driver-driven cars over there.
Correct.
So the cars are designed so differently. Everybody is in very big cars. In fact, you're frowned upon if you are, driving an SUV. You need to be in a in a sedan. You need to be in a big car. So I can totally relate with this, how cars over there are also so different from the cars that are in India, although we are just like,
Next
divided by,
door.
yeah, like we are almost the same sub-region and,
Yeah.
culturally very similar in many ways. But the way we consume our automotive over there is very different. Like, it was a
Correct. Correct.
complete shock for me. Yeah.
So
Wow.
this is why I say, this one size fits all global. Many companies have tried this, one global product that they
Hmm.
try to sell across the world, and in
Wow.
some markets, of course, it'll be successful, but in
Hmm.
other markets it fails miserably.
Yeah.
So, having a global product in that sense is
Hmm.
not a guarantor of success, and especially not in India. In India, you have to be very conscious about what you're designing.
Hmm. True, true. So I'm going to go to a different direction right now. I'm going to ask you about the time when you had, team members from 11 different countries, when you were at Tata Motors. And as an automotive design, where cultural preferences are so pronounced, like you explained right now, how does having that, cultural diversity change your approach to design decisions? Like, do you ever have any conflicts where teams from different cultures see the same design element, completely differently? How do you resolve that? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I myself have been a member of many international teams, both at Piaggio,
Mm.
in Mercedes, in Tata. I built that sort of team structure. Mahindra, we have the same. We have almost 16 countries now
Wow.
represented in Mahindra Design. Right from Canada to Iran to Turkey to Korea, India, of course, the UK, France, Germany. So we have a real Italy. We have a real mix of this, and I believe that it really strengthens
Mm.
the final outcome.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. When I was in Piaggio and I started my career there,
Mm.
they had a certain idea of what a vehicle for India should be. They took an old
Mm.
scooter and said, okay, we'll just put some colors, change the seat, make it longer. The typical, because people sit sideways in the back, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
they missed the whole fact that the product itself was outdated, and India was just coming out of that
Yeah.
license Raj era. This is, I'm talking about late 90s.
Uh-huh.
Piaggio was just going to enter the Indian market, and they came up with, what they showed me was ridiculous, and I said that, that this is going to fail miserably.
Mm.
And that's when they took a serious relook at the whole product introduction portfolio, all of that.
Mm.
I could do that because I had that perspective,
Correct.
you know again, perfectly good product for any other country perhaps, but it wasn't for India.
Mm.
Same at Mercedes. Why did we have a studio in Japan? Japan is the second or third largest market for Mercedes in the world. They have a deep appreciation of luxury, of quality, of refinement.
Mm.
So some of the models we would send from Japan to Germany reflected that.
Mm.
It reflected the craftsmanship that came from Japan. It reflected the sense of minimalism, the sense of tranquility that a vehicle needs to have, of that caliber and quality. Same at Tata. Like you said, we had 11 or 12 different nationalities.
Yeah.
So some of the products were designed by the international teams, some were designed by our local teams. And in Mahindra, it's the same thing. The B6 EV, which we launched, has been designed here in the UK studio.
Mm.
We did XEV 9E in the India studio. You know, I think, Radhika, the when you read my, let's say, designation or whatever it's called, and you say chief design officer or creative officer,
Mm.
my role is to actually direct the creativity towards a certain end product.
Mm.
But to not have a funnel of ideas is actually the worst thing for a design director. You have to be able to have a really wide range of ideas,
Mm.
and then yes, it's your job to be able to direct that and put it together in the final product. And you will therefore see different reflections of that. So 9E was designed for a certain target segment in India, rear seat luxury. So the India team came up with that sort of
Mm.
architecture, that package, that space for the person in the back. The BE was for a younger, more self-drive and driven
Mm.
customer. And the UK team took that on because they understand, what a smaller car means, with that emotion, of course.
Correct.
I mean, both are EVs, and they're both very different. And we get this because of that point of view,
Mm.
because of the different understanding that people have. And like I told you, my role is to direct all that creativity into a final configuration, which is the product you see. And of course, we have our planning teams, we have our engineering teams. All that input is always there.
Yeah.
But from a pure design standpoint, that's how I like to do it, because I've always been a part of that sort of structure. Multicultural, multi-point of view. When we talk about diversity, it's not just diversity of male, female, and stuff like that. I'm talking about diversity of ideas.
Correct.
So for us, or for me, it has always worked. I think we get the best ideas when you open it up to the world, literally.
Yeah.
And yeah, finally, it's my job to put it together.
So let's talk about interior design specifically. Car interiors are such intimate spaces, where cultural sensitivities around color, materials, and symbolism can be really very pronounced. So, can you walk me through how you approach interior design choices? That what will work across different cultural contexts? How do you go about this?
So, we of course follow uh, color, fabric, fashion,
Hmm.
trend cycles. There are trend cycles that agencies do. We obviously follow that, but we also make our own observation and own research into colors, and of course the materials, that the fabrics or materials that you use inside the car. So for example, in the B6, we saw this trend of a more environmentally conscious person emerging. Someone who's buying an EV
Mm,
uh, also has that frame of mind, that they're doing good to the planet.
mm,
So, for example, we developed a fabric which is 50 to 60% recycled PET bottles.
wow,
There was no supplier in India, and for that, so we got a supplier to put up a special line to create that fabric for us.
wow,
So when you believe in something, you have to sort of see it through.
lovely.
And and they were worrying about volume, and this is the investment, and this is the volume, it may not make sense. We said,
Yeah,
look, you start with us,
you'll get
and
money.
feel free to offer it to other OEMs.
Yeah,
It's not something that I want to keep only for Mahindra. It's something that we want to do for India
yeah,
and the world. So if you can take PET bottles and make them into a fabric that you use in a car seat, that's a win-win for everyone. So feel free to offer it to whoever you want.
that's
um, then we saw the emergence of certain colors through our trend research.
Mhm.
Uh, we tried to bring that in. Of course, lead times in cars is much longer than the fashion industry, so we have to be a little, sort of further ahead.
Yeah.
We brought in some incredible colors and materials in our latest cars. But there are also some stereotypes. So for example, lighter colors feel airier. So uh, we did that, but then it got really dirty very fast in India.
Yeah.
We had some complaints there, so we always also developed two or three alternatives, Radhika.
Mm,
So in the Thar, for example, we launched it with a light color because people felt it was going to be roomy and airy. But the customer who uses a Thar
mm,
uses it in a certain way, and he or she also is of a certain type. They're more rugged, they're outdoorsy, they like that sense of adventure. So
yeah.
their cars were getting, the white interior was getting, sort of quite dirty very quickly.
Mm,
So we offered them a coffee brown, which did extremely well. The same white interior does extremely well in the 9E, because it's a different customer target or a different customer segment. So yeah, we the main thing is to try and be ahead of the curve, to offer something that you think will be contemporary when we launch it. We see the same, overseas markets. The predominant preference is for black
mm,
and dark colors.
yeah.
They like a sportier. They're not worried about roomy and all of that. For them, it's about sportiness. It's
Correct.
about, this being hugged by the interior. It's
Mm,
a very very different approach. So the same product we send to Australia and we send to South Africa in a black interior. So XUV 700, XUV 3XO, the
mm.
two products we predominantly export are have a black interior in those overseas markets.
So, what I find really fascinating also is that the automotive industry has some very interesting examples of cultural crossover. Like, for example, luxury Japanese brands like Lexus are, stepping and adopting European luxury cues, or European
Yeah.
brands are adapting to the Asian markets. So, when you're building a brand identity, that needs to work globally, how do you create something that feels, really authentic rather than appropriative? What is your approach towards this?
Yeah, Radhika, I said this, I think, in the answer before. It's very, very important to know what you
Mm,
as a brand stand for.
mm,
Mahindra has been around since 1947. We are part of the growth of India. We are part of nation building, all of that. Those are stories which are intrinsically linked to us, and you cannot separate Mahindra from India, whatever we try. And we should therefore celebrate that and not try to be, can we be more South African, can we be more Australian? Yes, in the tonality of our communications, of course you have to do that. You have to speak in the language of the market. But I don't think, apart from what I told you, this darker interiors, a preference, that's a customer design choice.
Mm,
But I don't think we do. I wouldn't put like a Maori print or a South African tribal print on the interior of a seat. We do have collaborations with designers. So last year we did a great collaboration with a couple of designers from South Africa, and they gave it their spin, they made it their own. It wasn't me saying, oh look, I have seen some South African art, let me splash it on a car.
mm,
No, we actually collaborated with a local designer who's
mm,
extremely famous
mm,
in South Africa. We got him to do a line of clothing that reflected our product, and we also got him to work on the graphics of our car. We auctioned that car. So you have to do it in a way where you are including the that local community, rather than saying, oh, this is what I think you will like because I have seen a photograph of you wearing it. Here's a zebra print. I mean, that is
mm.
not only ridiculous, it's also insulting.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel, if you bring in a point of view from that market and they reflect it, they make it their own,
Mm,
then it's much more appropriate in the sense of the word, rather than cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is when you got nothing to do with something, and you sort of say, okay, here's my point of view of what you should be.
yeah.
So I think you have to be careful of that. We never shy away from the fact that we are an Indian brand. We're proudly Indian, as we said,
Mm,
but with global ambition and global quality, global safety, global quality of products, so that the customer can touch, feel, see.
mm.
But the cultural aspects are much more subtle, and that's where I think you have to not wade into this silliness of appropriation. So I loved the project we did last year, with the South African designer. It was incredible, and it was powerful because it was authentic, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. I really, really love this example that you have shared. And funnily enough, it just triggered the memory of the controversies surrounding the Kolhapuri chappal that
Yeah,
happened
yeah.
recently, or Mes doing that pop-up, if I may call it that. So,
you know I mean, if I was Prada, I would have gone to Kolhapur. They obviously have a tradition, hundreds of years, and I would have said, what do you see a Prada Kolhapuri shoe can chappal can be? Maybe they would have come up with something even better, right?
yeah,
So I think it's better to use really a local input,
yeah,
which makes it authentic, rather than you doing something superficial, splashing it on the surface.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that, and even I think somebody tried to trademark the KD design also in clothes, in fashion. So yeah,
Yes.
these are very
Yes.
prominent examples of people trying to do appropriation rather than appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It would
The name of the designer, in case y'all are interested, it was Thula Cindy. He's a very, very famous South African men's and women's wear designer, and Thula did such an incredible job. I mean, we learned so much from him,
wow.
on how they saw our car, and we would have never reached, let's say, that conclusion or that outcome had we not involved Thula. So it was super important to do that.
Love, love. Pratap, I'm going to direct you a little bit more about into your teaching cultural intelligence to your team. I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you're leading such a large automotive design teams right now. And this industry traditionally has been quite male and quite Western in its leadership.
Yes,
How do you teach cultural sensitivity to automotive designers who may not have that diverse cultural experience simply because they've not had the exposure? You
absolutely.
can't hold it against them and
No, no, not at all.
Yeah, and in this industry, where universal design has often, meant appealing only to the Western markets. So,
Mhm.
how do you happen to teach this to your team? How do they get sensitized to cultural?
So, Radhika, the first step in this is who you hire.
Hmm.
Now, when you hire people, and you see their portfolios or you see their experience, you see how open-minded that person is, he or she,
Hmm.
to these experiences.
Hmm.
Where have they been? Where have they gone on holiday? Have they even left Warwickshire, or have they even left Mumbai and bothered to step out into the world? So those are some of the filters you start applying straight away.
Hmm.
What has this person experienced of the world?
Hmm.
And like you said, people have different opportunities and different constraints, and it doesn't matter that, you know uh, okay, I have only traveled in Europe. That's also fine,
Hmm.
because that's an outcome of what you are able to do
Correct.
in your youth. So you're right, you never hold that against the person. But how interested are you in understanding what's going on in the world?
Hmm.
How open are you to ideas that emerge from elsewhere? How does that reflect in your portfolio? So those are some of the things we look at even before someone becomes a designer at Mahindra.
Wow.
What is the attitude? And this is important because you have lots of closed minds
Hmm.
and very hard formed ideas, but you have lots of people with extremely
Hmm.
curious. Designers should be curious, right? That's a absolute basic tenet of being a designer: curiosity.
Hmm.
Knowing, trying to find out things, how they work, where they come from, who they are for, who makes them, who uses them, how they use them. You have to have the curiosity anyway inbuilt in you as a designer. So when we hire people, we look at these things: curiosity, openness.
Hmm.
Now once you've done that, that's half the job done.
Correct.
The second part of the job is to get them on a plane and send them, to India, or from India to the UK. And we do that. We have an exchange with both the studios. Just 3 or 4 weeks ago, the team from the UK traveled, to Rajasthan. They traveled extensively in Maharashtra to understand, and we call this immersion, to
Hmm.
really immerse themselves in that world, you
Yeah.
know and not be judgmental about it. I think this is
Yeah.
very important. When you are an outsider, trying to understand another culture, another country, it's very
Hmm.
important to not be judgmental. Those people are the way they are because of certain conditions that exist there,
Correct.
whatever they may be: social, economic, socio-economic, political.
True.
People are the way they are because of what surrounds them. So
Correct.
can you understand enough of what molds people? Can you understand those pressures, those pulls and pushes,
Hmm.
to then be able to reflect that in your product?
Hmm.
In a product, you have interior, exterior, of course, you have powertrain, you've got all the mechanical aggregates. There's a certain budget that you have to allocate to each element,
Hmm.
because we design to a cost.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it goes beyond
Yeah.
the budget of that target. And
Correct.
people think, oh, Mercedes costs 1 crore, it's so easy to design. It's not.
Hmm.
Even within that crore, you have to find out where to put the money.
Yeah.
Um, so when I so when when the guys, or when the team goes out and they come back after understanding,
Hmm.
they are able to make better choices of how to negotiate with the other parts of the company
Hmm.
in where we should put the money.
Ah.
So for example, technology is a huge thing in India. So we do spend a lot of time, money, effort in our screen.
Hmm.
We're the first to introduce the three screens
Hmm.
in some of our products. That may not necessarily be true for a European product. Here maybe it's not as appreciated. So we spend the money on something else. Maybe it's the materials. You use leather, or
Ah.
you use a beautiful fabric.
Hmm.
So how you spend the money and where you put it in a car
Hmm.
comes from the understanding of the context. So yeah.
So, but then looking at the current generation of automotive designers who are mainly, globally connected than ever. So, do you think they are better or worse at navigating these cultural sensitivities in car design compared to the previous generations? Or is the automotive industry getting more culturally intelligent? What is your take on it?
No, for me, it's certainly getting more culturally intelligent. There's a lot more information at your fingertips now. You can immerse yourself in a market without necessarily going there. Of course, going there and seeing and smelling and feeling and eating
Hmm.
and experiencing, nothing beats that. But
Yeah,
at least you can form some ideas. In our time, we had no clue what was going on outside Ahmedabad. When we were studying, forget the rest of the world. But
yeah,
now you can at least form an idea, form a hypothesis
yeah,
that allows you to start design.
correct.
So I think, yes, culturally much more aware. They know already. They know some of the nuances.
Hmm.
Someone sitting in Mumbai will know the K-pop bands. They'll know K-beauty. They'll know things like that which we never had access to.
Yeah, we know.
So there is a global subculture, which actually unites us all, which is very, very common. I mean, the language someone would speak in London and the language someone would speak in parts of Mumbai or Seoul or New York would be the same, for a certain cohort
Yeah,
or generation.
yeah.
uh, there's lots of shared cultural values, which I think this generation knows and understands very well.
Good. I'm happy to know that all is not lost with this generation, like
Not
how
at all.
you are saying. Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, Pratap, this brings me to the fun part, which is the design mindset challenge. And here's an automotive specific scenario that I want to give you. And the heart of this is cultural sensitivity. Okay, so here's the scenario. Listen to it and then just give me your thoughts on it. So imagine that Mahindra is developing a premium SUV for global launch: India, Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. Your design team proposes incorporating elements inspired by traditional Indian architectural details. For example, carved stone patterns, temple inspired portions, and maybe metalwork motifs into the vehicle's exterior and interior design. The marketing team is very excited, that exotic luxury, that positioning is the opportunity, to differentiate in the German and the Japanese competitors. This is a good position to have. However, you're concerned about several things like these architectural elements. Some of them could, contain sacred things in certain contexts, or you risk creating a design that feels like Indian themed rather than authentically Indian. So you may be appropriating religious or maybe cultural symbolism for commercial purpose. That is your concern. But the business team argues that no, this could be Mahindra's breakthrough into luxury markets globally. But you're also concerned about the backlash, both from Indian communities or who might, see this as an exploitive, you know, purpose or something like that. So the CEO wants you to now make the decision. How would you proceed, like with the cultural inspired design that could be a market differentiator, or find a different path that might be safer, less distinctive? Like, how would you navigate?
Yeah, I think a culture or a cultural symbols, cultural influences should be felt. They are authentic when they are felt.
Hmm.
Why does someone love German cars? Because when you shut the door, the sound that it makes
Hmm.
gives you the impression of this solid German engineering.
Yeah.
You know, it, it feels solid. It feels like it's built well. It feels like it'll stay together. Why do you buy a British car? You buy a British car because when you get in, you feel a sense of British luxury.
Hmm.
They aren't putting the flag everywhere, or they aren't putting like a Union Jack. Some do, but some don't, right?
Yeah.
It's more, you should feel,
Hmm.
and you should feel what you appreciate about that country. And I think India is becoming about progressive. It's becoming about technology. It's becoming about high tech. We are, the world is noticing that we are now going to make 2 nanometer semiconductors.
Hmm.
um, we are creating some of the best technology, best AI. So I think the expectation of the world from for a car from India is very different from what we think, and I think if you can reflect some of those,
Hmm.
if you can reflect some of that in the design or in the product,
Hmm.
I think you stand a much better chance than putting temple architecture or carvings, and because that's very stereotypical, right? You go to any restaurant here, it's called Taj Mahal, it's called Noor Jahan, whatever,
Yeah.
but there is a modern Indian cuisine emerging. What Gagan does in Bangkok, or what Vikas does in New York. That has those have waiting lists of years. Why? Because they are able to reinterpret what India is,
Hmm.
and then offer it in a with that twist.
Correct.
So I think it's very important to stay away from stereotypes, because stereotypes will get you a few customers, who may or may not like that. But
Hmm.
if you want to make a sustainable business in a country, I think it's very important you reflect what your country is known for, and then you can truly surprise the world. And I really feel from the world of food,
Hmm.
uh, you you do start seeing those signs, like these examples I took.
Yeah.
They could have made the best butter chicken in the world, and the same curries, and the
Correct.
same chicken tikka masala, but no, they don't do it, and no one says that Gagan is not Indian in that sense.
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah.
India global balance
Yeah.
that they're able to strike. So yes, if there's something amazing about a material we use,
Hmm.
which we can then bring into the automotive world, because our testing and
Hmm.
durability testing is extremely severe,
Hmm.
flammability, durability, all of that. So you know Radhika, it's not that I wouldn't want to use I don't know, like a Kashmiri shawl somewhere in the that material,
Yeah.
but it just simply won't work in the through the testing cycle. So it anyway directs you towards a certain choice of materials. But yeah, can we reflect this high tech
Hmm.
India emerging, this confidence of India, can we reflect that in the product? That is something I would argue for, rather than you know temples and mango motifs and whatever.
Lovely, lovely. What a lovely answer to come to. So, this moves us into the next segment, which is the rapid fire. So, no thinking. I'll ask a question. You just reply the way you feel like. The difference between cultural appreciation and appropriation in automotive design is
Is respect. I think
one,
you have to respect one to gain respect.
hmm, one automotive design element that's commonly misappropriated across cultures.
Um, Probably the seat fabric, maybe.
Mhm.
I see that as one of those areas.
Mhm. Okay, and then the best way to research cultural preferences before designing a new automotive market.
Immersion. Nothing beats immersion. Uh, Both desktop and then physical.
Okay, and when in doubt about cultural sensitivity in car design, is there any go to decision framework that you have?
We would actually ask the market where the product is destined for. We would actually take it there and get their input. Uh, I'm not a great believer in clinics and market studies, but for something like this where there is a question, I would definitely take it to the market.
And most important question to ask yourself when drawing cultural inspiration for automotive design.
How authentic are you being,
Hmm.
versus how superficial is something in its appearance? Authenticity is what culture truly is, and if you respect that culture and want to be authentic, then I think that's top of mind.
And one word, what makes cross cultural automotive design successful in one word.
Points of view.
Lovely. Lovely. Pratap, this conversation has been incredibly enlightening, especially seeing how these cultural sensitivity principles apply specifically to automotive design. And what strikes me the most in this, what you have shared with me, is the national identity and cultural preferences are so pronounced, and that the path forward isn't cultural neutrality, it's like cultural intelligence instead. So, your key insight that really resonates with me is that automotive design that respects culture doesn't avoid cultural elements, it just
Yeah,
understands why those elements matter and use them in ways in that honor rather than exploit their significance. So, whether it's the impact design language celebrating Indian heritage or developing a new electric mobility concept, it's about a cultural bridge rather than being a cultural tourist, so to
yeah,
say. So, for the designers that are listening to us today, whether it is an automotive or any other field, that here's your framework: research the roots, understand the meaning, engage with the communities, immerse yourself there,
yes,
and always ask whether your work, contributes to the cultural appreciation or is just an extraction. So, in the automotive industry specifically, where design choices are so visible and culturally loaded, this kind of thoughtful approach isn't just ethically important, it's essential for creating authentic, lasting brand connections across,
absolutely.
across diverse global markets. So, Pratap, where can people follow your work and see these principles at action in Mahindra?
On the road, I hope, on the road in our showrooms. I am quite active on LinkedIn,
Yeah, you have it.
Instagram,
Yeah. So,
Instagram as
yeah,
well. I
yeah,
think it'll give them a flavor of my thought process and
yeah.
how I go about
True.
my work.
I will be sharing that with our listeners for sure. So, thanks for joining Design Mindset and for showing us that great global automotive design doesn't require cultural insensitivity, it requires cultural intelligence. And next week, we're expecting on how, exploring how constraints actually fuel creativity. So, another paradox that the best of designers understand intuitively. So let us just remember, don't just design globally, design respectfully. See you all next week.